A delivery boy's life-changing decision. The rain pounded against the windshield of Marcus Chen's old delivery scooter as he navigated through the busy streets of downtown Chicago. At 23, Marcus had been working as a food delivery driver for almost 2 years, barely making enough money to pay rent for his tiny studio apartment. His clothes were always damp from the weather, his phone battery constantly dying from the delivery app, and his back ached from carrying heavy bags up countless flights of stairs. That Thursday evening started like any other. Marcus had already completed 12 deliveries, earning just enough to cover his daily expenses. The delivery app on his cracked phone screen showed one more order waiting, a simple request for soup and bread from Chen's Kitchen, a small Chinese restaurant he knew well. The destination was Riverside Manor, an upscale neighborhood Marcus rarely visited because the tips there were usually disappointing despite the wealthy residents. As he picked up the warm containers from Mrs. Chen at the restaurant, she smiled at him with her usual motherly concern. "Marcus, you look tired today. Maybe you should rest more," she said in her broken English, handing him the paper bag. Marcus managed a weak smile back. "Can't rest, Mrs. Chen. Bills don't pay themselves." She shook her head sadly, watching him disappear into the rain once again. The address led Marcus to a grand old mansion that looked like it belonged in a movie. The iron gates were slightly open, and the long driveway was lined with tall oak trees that swayed in the wind. As he approached the front door, Marcus noticed something strange. All the lights in the house were off except for one window on the second floor. The mansion felt empty and forgotten, which seemed odd for such an expensive neighborhood. Marcus pressed the doorbell and waited. After a few minutes, he heard slow footsteps approaching from inside. The door opened to reveal an elderly man who looked to be in his 70s. He was wearing a faded blue bathrobe and slippers, his white hair messy as if he had just woken up. But what caught Marcus's attention immediately were the man's eyes. They looked incredibly sad and tired, like someone who had given up on life. "You must be the delivery boy," the old man said in a weak voice, reaching into his robe pocket. "How much do I owe you?" Marcus noticed the man's hands were shaking as he tried to count the crumpled bills. $22, sir," Marcus replied, but something about the man's appearance worried him. The elderly gentleman looked extremely thin, almost frail, and his skin had an unhealthy pale color. As the old man handed over the money, he suddenly swayed and grabbed the doorframe for support. Marcus immediately stepped forward, concerned. "Sir, are you okay? You don't look well." The man tried to wave him away, but Marcus could see he was struggling to stay upright. "I'm fine, just tired," the man whispered, but his breathing was labored and shallow. Marcus looked at the old man more carefully. His lips had a slight blue tint, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Having grown up with his grandmother who had heart problems, Marcus recognized the signs of someone who might be seriously ill. "Sir, when was the last time you ate? Something? Or saw a doctor?" Marcus asked gently. The old man's eyes filled with tears, and he shook his head slowly. "There's no point anymore, young man. I'm all alone here. My health is failing, and I don't have anyone left who cares." The vulnerability in his voice touched something deep in Marcus's heart. Here was this obviously wealthy man, living in a mansion, but he seemed more lonely and desperate than anyone Marcus had ever met on his delivery routes. Marcus glanced back at his scooter, then at his phone showing 3 more delivery requests waiting. He knew he needed the money. His rent was due in 2 days, and he was already behind on his electricity bill. But looking at this frail old man standing in the doorway of his empty mansion, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. "Sir, have you eaten anything today besides this soup?" Marcus asked, stepping closer to the door. The old man thought for a moment, then shook his head. "No. I haven't had much appetite lately." Marcus looked at the delivery bag in his hands, then back at the man's pale face. Would you mind if I came in for a few minutes? I'd like to make sure you eat this while it's still warm." The old man looked surprised by the offer. "You don't need to do that. I'm sure you have other deliveries to make." Marcus checked his phone. Again, the delivery app was now showing 4 pending orders, and his supervisor would probably call soon asking about delays. But something about this moment felt more important than his job. "The other deliveries can wait," Marcus said firmly. "Right now, you need someone to make sure you're okay." The old man's eyes widened with disbelief. "You would do that? But you don't even know me." Marcus smiled warmly. "My grandmother always taught me that when you see someone who needs help, you help them. It doesn't matter if you know them or not." The elderly man stepped aside, gesturing for Marcus to enter. "My name is William," he said softly. "William Harrison." Marcus followed him into the mansion, noticing how quiet and cold it felt inside. The furniture was covered with dust sheets, and family photos lined the hallway, showing happier times, with people who were no longer there. As they walked toward the kitchen, Marcus's phone began buzzing with notifications, missed delivery alerts, messages from frustrated customers, and a call from his supervisor. Marcus looked at the screen, knowing that ignoring these calls might cost him his job. But when he glanced at William, who was moving slowly and carefully toward a chair at the kitchen table, Marcus made his choice. He turned off his phone completely and set it aside. "Let's get you fed, Mr. Harrison," Marcus said, opening the containers of soup and bread. "And then we need to talk about getting you some proper medical attention." William looked at Marcus with wonder, as if he couldn't believe that a stranger would show him such kindness. Neither of them knew that this simple act of compassion was about to reveal secrets that would shock them both and change their lives forever. Unexpected revelations. Marcus spent the next hour with William, watching carefully as the elderly man slowly ate the soup and bread. The color gradually returned to William's cheeks, and his breathing became more steady. As they sat in the large, quiet kitchen, William began to share pieces of his life story that painted a picture of profound loneliness and regret. "I used to have a family," William said, staring into his soup bowl. "A son named David. He was everything to me after my wife died 15 years ago. But we had a terrible fight about 5 years ago, and he hasn't spoken to me since." Marcus listened quietly, sensing that William needed to tell someone his story. "What was the fight about?" Marcus asked gently. William's hands trembled as he set down his spoon. "David wanted to take over the family business, but he had different ideas about how to run it. He wanted to expand, take risks, modernize everything. I was afraid of losing what we had built, so I refused to let him make changes. We said awful things to each other that night. I told him he was reckless and ungrateful. He told me I was, a stubborn old fool who would rather see the business die than admit I was wrong." The pain in William's voice was clear as he continued. "The next morning, David packed his things and left. He started his own company and became incredibly successful, more successful than I ever imagined possible. But he never came back, never called, never forgave me for not believing in him." Marcus felt his heart break for this lonely old man who had lost his son over pride and fear. "Have you tried reaching out to him?" Marcus asked. William nodded, sadly. "Many times over the years. I've written letters, sent emails, even hired private investigators to find out where he lives now. But David has made it clear he wants nothing to do with me. My lawyers tell me he's built a business empire worth billions of dollars. He's married now, has children I've never met. He's built a whole life without me in it." As William spoke, Marcus noticed several framed photographs on the kitchen counter showing a younger William with a handsome man who appeared to be in his 30s. The son looked confident and ambitious, with kind eyes that reminded Marcus of William's own gentle nature. "That's David," William said, following Marcus's gaze. "This was taken at his college graduation. He was so proud that day, so full of dreams and plans. I was proud of him too, but I was also terrified of change. Marcus picked up one of the photos, studying David's face. Something about the man looked familiar, but Marcus couldn't place where he might have seen him before. "Mr. Harrison, what kind of business did your family run?" Marcus asked. William sighed deeply. "Harrison Industries. We started as a small manufacturing company, but over the decades it grew into something much larger. When David left, I tried to keep it going, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. I sold most of it off piece by piece. That's why this house feels so empty now. It used to be full of life and purpose." The name Harrison Industries rang a bell in Marcus's memory, but he couldn't quite connect it to anything specific. He had heard the name somewhere before, possibly in news reports or business articles he had glanced at, but the details escaped him. "Mr. Harrison, when was the last time you saw a doctor?" Marcus asked, steering the conversation back to William's immediate health concerns. William laughed bitterly. "What's the point? I'm 76 years old, I'm alone, and I'm tired of fighting. The doctors will just tell me to take medications and change my lifestyle. But for what? So I can live a few more years in this empty house, waiting for a son who will never forgive me?" Marcus felt a surge of anger at William's defeatist attitude, but he also understood the depth of the man's despair. "Mr. Harrison, with respect, that's not your decision to make alone," Marcus said firmly. "What if David did want to reconcile but doesn't know how to reach you either? What if he's waiting for you to make the first move? You can't give up on life and assume that he doesn't care." William looked at Marcus with surprise, unused to being challenged so directly. "Young man, you don't understand. David has made his feelings very clear. He's built walls around himself that I can't break through. He's probably better off without a foolish old father who couldn't see his potential when it mattered." Marcus shook his head, thinking about his own relationship with his late grandmother and how much he would give for one more conversation with her. "Mr. Harrison, I may not know much about business or family dynamics, but I know something about regret. My grandmother raised me after my parents died, and we had our share of arguments too. But even when we were angry with each other, the love was always there underneath. Real family bonds don't just disappear because of one fight, no matter how bad it was." William's eyes filled with tears again. "But what if you're wrong? What if I try to reach out and he rejects me again? I don't think I could survive that kind of pain one more time." Marcus leaned forward, speaking with conviction. "And what if I'm right? What if he's been waiting for you to try again? You'll never know unless you take that chance. But first, we need to get you healthy enough to have that conversation." Marcus stood up and began clearing the empty soup containers. "Mr. Harrison, I'm going to call my friend Jenny. She's a nurse at Chicago General Hospital. I want her to come take a look at you and make sure you're okay." William started to protest, but Marcus held up his hand. "No arguments. You can't reconcile with your son if you don't take care of your health first." As Marcus reached for his phone, he realized he had turned it off hours ago. When he powered it back on, the screen exploded with notifications. Dozens of missed calls from his supervisor, angry messages from customers whose orders were never delivered, and an email from the delivery company informing him that his employment had been terminated effective immediately. Marcus stared at the phone screen, feeling a mixture of panic and resignation. He had just lost his job, his only source of income, for a man he had known for less than 3 hours. His rational mind told him he had made a terrible mistake, but his heart told him he had done the right thing. William noticed Marcus's expression and asked what was wrong. "I just got fired," Marcus said simply, setting the phone aside. "I missed too many deliveries tonight." William's face went pale with shock and guilt. "Oh no, this is all my fault. You lost your job because of me. I'm so sorry, Marcus. How can I make this right?" Marcus managed a small smile. "Don't worry about it, Mr. Harrison. I've been thinking about finding a different job anyway." But even as Marcus tried to reassure William, his mind was racing with worry. How would he pay his rent? How would he buy groceries? He had maybe $50 in his bank account and no other job prospects. He had just sacrificed his financial security for a stranger, and he wasn't sure if that made him compassionate or foolish. What he didn't know was that his act of selfless kindness was about to set in motion a series of events that would reveal the true identity of the man he had chosen to help. The truth begins to surface. The next morning, Marcus woke up in William's guest bedroom, having stayed overnight to monitor the elderly man's condition. Jenny, his nurse friend, had arrived late the previous evening and confirmed Marcus's concerns. William was severely dehydrated, malnourished, and showing signs of a possible heart condition that required immediate medical attention. She had insisted on staying as well to keep an eye on William through the night. As Marcus made his way to the kitchen, he found William sitting at the table with Jenny, looking much better than he had the night before. The color had returned to his face, and he seemed more alert and energetic. "Good morning, Marcus," William said warmly. "I can't thank you enough for what you've done. Jenny tells me you might have saved my life by insisting I get medical attention." Jenny nodded seriously as she packed up her medical supplies. "His blood pressure was dangerously low and he was showing signs of heart arrhythmia. If you hadn't stayed and called me, he could have had a serious cardiac event during the night." Marcus felt relieved that his instincts had been correct, but he was also worried about the growing medical bills that William would face. "Mr. Harrison, we need to get you to a proper hospital for more tests," Marcus said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "Jenny did what she could, but you need comprehensive care from specialists." William hesitated, and Marcus could see the fear in his eyes. "What if the doctors find something terrible? What if I'm dying and there's nothing they can do?" Marcus sat down across from William, speaking gently but firmly. "Then at least you'll know the truth, and you can make decisions based on real information instead of fear and assumptions." "But Mr. Harrison, what if they find something that's completely treatable? What if all you need is medication and proper nutrition to get your strength back?" William considered this, slowly nodding his agreement. As they prepared to leave for the hospital, William insisted on giving Marcus money to compensate for his lost job income. "I know you lost your employment because of me," William said, pressing several $100 bills into Marcus's hands. "This should help until you find something new." Marcus was reluctant to accept the money, but his practical side knew he needed it to survive while job hunting. At Chicago General Hospital, William underwent a series of tests while Marcus waited in the family area. During the long hours of waiting, Marcus found himself thinking about William's son David and the family business called Harrison Industries. The name continued to nag at him, and he decided to do some research on his phone while William was with the doctors. What Marcus discovered shocked him completely. Harrison Industries wasn't just any family business. It had been one of the largest manufacturing companies in the Midwest before being sold off in pieces over the past few years. But more importantly, Marcus found dozens of news articles about David Harrison, William's estranged son, who had indeed built a business empire worth billions of dollars. David Harrison was the founder and CEO of Harrison Global Enterprises, a technology and investment company that had become one of the most successful businesses in the country. Marcus stared at photos of David in business magazines and news articles, recognizing the same kind eyes and determined expression he had seen in William's old family photographs. This was definitely the same person. As Marcus read more about David Harrison's success story, he began to understand the full scope of what had happened between father and son. The business articles described David as a visionary entrepreneur who had revolutionized several industries through innovative thinking and calculated risks. The very qualities that William had feared were the ones that had made David incredibly successful. But what struck Marcus most was something he found in a recent interview with David Harrison in Fortune magazine. When asked about his family background, David had said, "I learned my work ethic and determination from my father, but I had to leave his company to prove that his methods weren't the only way to succeed. I hope someday he'll understand that I wasn't rejecting him personally. I was just choosing a different path." The statement revealed that David still thought about his father and perhaps even missed him. Marcus felt a growing excitement as he realized that William's assumption about David's complete rejection might be wrong. There seemed to be love and respect still present, buried under years of hurt pride and misunderstanding. When the doctor finally called Marcus to discuss William's test results, the news was both concerning and hopeful. "Mr. Harrison has significant heart problems that require immediate treatment," Dr. Martinez explained. "He has severe coronary artery disease and will need surgery within the next few weeks. However, with proper treatment, his prognosis is actually quite good. This is definitely treatable, but he can't continue neglecting his health." Marcus felt relief flood through him as he realized William's conditions weren't terminal. "What does he need to do now?" Marcus asked. Dr. Martinez handed him a list of medications and follow-up appointments. "He needs complete rest, proper nutrition, and he absolutely cannot live alone right now. He needs someone to monitor his condition and make sure he takes his medications correctly. Do you know of any family members who could help?" This was the moment Marcus had been hoping for. "Doctor, I think I might have a solution for that. But first, I need to make a very important phone call." Marcus excused himself and went to a quiet corner of the hospital waiting room. His hands were shaking as he pulled up the contact information for Harrison Global Enterprises that he had found online. When the receptionist answered, Marcus took a deep breath. "Good afternoon. I need to speak with David Harrison urgently." "It's about his father, William Harrison. This is a family emergency." The receptionist put him on hold, and Marcus's heart pounded as he waited. He was about to make a phone call that could either reunite a family or create even more pain for William. After several minutes, a familiar voice came on the line. The same voice Marcus had heard in online interview videos. "This is David Harrison. Who is this? And what's this about my father?" Marcus could hear tension and worry in David's voice, which gave him hope that David still cared about William, despite their years of separation. "Mr. Harrison, my name is Marcus Chen. I'm calling from Chicago General Hospital. Your father is here, and he needs surgery for a serious heart condition. But more than that, he needs his family. He's been living alone and basically gave up on life because he thinks you hate him." There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Is he going to be okay?" David's voice was barely a whisper, and Marcus could hear the pain and love that had been hidden for so many years. "The doctors say yes with proper treatment, but Mr. Harrison, your father has been slowly dying of loneliness and regret. He loves you more than you know, and he's sorry for the fight you had. He just doesn't know how to reach out to you." Marcus heard David take a shaky breath. "I've been wanting to call him for years, but I was too proud and too afraid he wouldn't want to hear from me. I built all this success partly to prove to him that I could do it, but also because I hoped someday he'd be proud of me." Marcus smiled, knowing that William would be amazed to hear these words from his son. A son's return, David Harrison arrived at Chicago General Hospital less than 3 hours after Marcus's phone call. Marcus was amazed at how quickly David had managed to get to Chicago, later learning that David had immediately chartered a private jet from his headquarters in New York. When David walked into the hospital waiting room, Marcus recognized him instantly from the photos, but seeing him in person revealed the deep emotional toll that 5 years of separation had taken on him. David was a tall, well-dressed man in his early 40s, with the same gentle eyes as his father, but carrying an expression of deep worry and regret. His expensive suit and confident demeanor couldn't hide the vulnerability Marcus saw as David approached him. "Are you Marcus?" David asked, extending his hand. "I can't thank you enough for calling me. How is he?" Can I see him? Marcus shook David's hand, noting the firm grip and sincere gratitude in his voice. He's stable now, but he's been asking for you ever since he woke up from the sedation. The nurses said you can see him, but David, he's been very sick and weak. He looks frail, and he's been living with tremendous guilt about your relationship. Please be gentle with him. As they walked toward William's hospital room, Marcus filled David in on how he had met William and the events of the past 2 days. David listened intently, shaking his head in disbelief. You gave up your job for him? You stayed with a complete stranger and took care of him? Marcus shrugged modestly. He needed help. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, Marcus, not everyone would have done what you did, David said firmly. Most people would have delivered the food and left. You saw something in him that made you care, and you acted on that compassion even when it cost you personally. That says everything about your character. Marcus felt embarrassed by the praise, but also proud that his actions had led to this potential reunion. When they reached William's room, David stopped outside the door, suddenly overcome with nervousness. What if he doesn't want to see me? What if I say the wrong thing again? Marcus placed a reassuring hand on David's shoulder. He's been hoping you would come back for 5 years. Trust me. He wants to see you more than anything in the world. Marcus opened the door quietly, and David followed him into the room. William was lying in the hospital bed, looking small and fragile against the white sheets, but his eyes were clear and alert. When he saw David, William's entire face transformed with shock, joy, and disbelief. "David?" William whispered, his voice breaking with emotion. "Is it really you?" David moved quickly to his father's bedside, tears streaming down his face. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for everything. For the fight, for staying away so long, for being too proud to call you." William reached out with a shaking hand, and David grasped it tightly. "My son, my boy, you came back to me." Marcus quietly stepped back toward the door, wanting to give the family privacy for their reunion, but William called out to him. "Marcus, please don't leave. You're the reason David is here. You saved my life in more ways than one." David turned to look at Marcus with fresh appreciation. "Dad's right. If you hadn't cared enough to help him, I might have lost him forever without ever getting the chance to make things right." The conversation between father and son was emotional and healing. They talked for hours about the years they had lost, the misunderstandings that had driven them apart, and the love that had never really disappeared despite their separation. William learned about David's incredible business success, his marriage to a wonderful woman named Sarah, and his 2 children, William's grandchildren he had never met. "Dad, I need you to know that everything I built was partly for you," David said, holding his father's hand. "I wanted to prove that your lessons about hard work and integrity could succeed even with modern methods. I was never trying to reject everything you taught me. I was trying to build on it." William wiped tears from his eyes, finally understanding his son's motivations. "I was so afraid of losing what we had that I couldn't see the potential for what we could become," William admitted. "I should have trusted you and supported your vision instead of fighting against it. I let fear make me a stubborn old fool, just like you said." David squeezed his father's hand. "We both said things we didn't mean. What matters now is that we found our way back to each other." As the reunion continued, Marcus learned more about David's remarkable success story. Harrison Global Enterprises wasn't just successful, it was a revolutionary company that had transformed multiple industries through innovative technology and ethical business practices. David had built something far greater than what the original Harrison Industries had ever been, proving that his vision had been correct all along. "Marcus, I owe you a debt I can never repay," David said during a quiet moment. "You didn't just save my father's life. You gave me back my family. Is there anything I can do to thank you?" I know you lost your job because of this." Marcus felt uncomfortable with such gratitude for something that had felt natural and right to him. "You don't owe me anything, Mr. Harrison. Seeing your father smile like this is thanks enough," Marcus replied honestly. But David wasn't satisfied with that answer. "Marcus, you sacrificed your livelihood for a stranger's well-being. That kind of character and compassion is exactly what the world needs more of. I have a business proposition for you, if you're interested in hearing it." Marcus was curious but also slightly overwhelmed by everything that had happened. "What kind of proposition?" David smiled. The same warm smile Marcus had seen in William's old family photographs. "Harrison Global Enterprises is always looking for people with your kind of integrity and heart. But more than that, I want to create a foundation dedicated to helping people who show extraordinary kindness to strangers. Would you be interested in helping me run it?" The offer stunned Marcus completely. He had gone from being an unemployed delivery driver to potentially working for one of the most successful businessmen in the country, all because he had chosen to help an elderly man eat his soup. I don't know what to say. I don't have any experience in business or running foundations." William spoke up from his hospital bed, his voice stronger than it had been in days. "Marcus, experience can be learned, but character like yours can't be taught. David recognizes something special in you, just like I did when you chose to stay and help me instead of rushing off to your other deliveries." David nodded in agreement. "We can teach you everything you need to know about business. What we can't teach is the instinct to put another person's well-being before your own interests." As Marcus considered this incredible opportunity, he realized that his simple act of kindness had not only reunited a family, but had also opened doors he never could have imagined. The decision he had made to help William, despite the cost to himself, was about to transform his own life in ways he was only beginning to understand. But first, they all needed to focus on getting William healthy enough to meet his grandchildren and begin building new memories with the family he had missed for so long. New beginnings and unexpected discoveries. 3 weeks after William's successful heart surgery, Marcus found himself standing in the lobby of Harrison Global Enterprises' Chicago office, wearing his first business suit and carrying a briefcase that still felt foreign in his hands. David had been true to his word about the job offer, but the reality of working for a billion-dollar company was overwhelming for someone who had been delivering food just a month earlier. William had recovered remarkably well from his surgery, and the change in his demeanor was dramatic. Having his son back in his life had given him a reason to fight for his health, and the prospect of meeting his grandchildren had energized him in ways the doctors said were helping his recovery. David had moved William into a private rehabilitation facility where he could receive the best care while regaining his strength. Sarah Harrison, David's wife, had flown in from New York with their 2 children, 8-year-old Emma and 10-year-old Michael. The meeting between William and his grandchildren had been emotional and beautiful, with the children instantly warming to the grandfather they had heard about but never met. Marcus had been present for that reunion, and watching William's face light up as he hugged his grandchildren for the first time had confirmed that everything Marcus had sacrificed had been worthwhile. "Marcus, welcome to your new office," David said, opening the door to a spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River. "I know this is a big change from delivering food, but I believe you're going to do amazing things here." The office was larger than Marcus's entire studio apartment had been, complete with a mahogany desk, leather chairs, and artwork that probably cost more than Marcus had made in a year at his delivery job. David had designed Marcus's new role specifically around his character and instincts. As Director of Community Outreach and Charitable Initiatives, Marcus would be responsible for identifying and supporting people who showed extraordinary kindness to others, just as he had done for William. The Harrison Foundation, as it was now, had been established with an initial funding of $50 million, all dedicated to rewarding and amplifying acts of compassion. Your first project is to develop a system for finding people like yourself, David explained as they sat in Marcus's new office. People who put others' needs before their own, who show kindness to strangers, who make sacrifices for the greater good. We want to support them, celebrate them, and create programs that encourage more of this behavior in society. Marcus felt both excited and intimidated by the scope of his new responsibilities. Over the following weeks, Marcus threw himself into his new role with the same dedication he had shown when helping William. He researched existing charitable programs, studied successful foundations, and began developing criteria for identifying deserving recipients of the foundation's support. His background in working with ordinary people gave him insights that impressed David and the other executives at Harrison Global Enterprises. Marcus's first major discovery came when he was reviewing applications for the foundation's help. A letter from Detroit caught his attention, written by a factory worker named Roberto Martinez who had used his entire savings to keep a local food bank open when its funding was cut. Roberto had worked double shifts for 6 months to earn the money, sacrificing time with his own family to ensure that hungry families in his neighborhood could still get meals. When Marcus traveled to Detroit to meet Roberto, he found a man whose story reminded him of his own decision to help William. Roberto had seen a need, understood the cost of helping, and chosen to act anyway because it was the right thing to do. I couldn't let those families go hungry just because some bureaucrats in Washington decided to cut funding, Roberto explained, as he showed Marcus around the food bank. My kids understood why Daddy was working more. They knew we were helping other kids eat. Marcus arranged for the Harrison Foundation to not only reimburse Roberto for his personal expenses, but also to provide long-term funding for the food bank and create a scholarship fund for Roberto's children. When Marcus presented Roberto with a check for $100,000, the man broke down in tears, unable to believe that his quiet act of sacrifice had been recognized and rewarded so generously. The success of Roberto's case led to dozens of similar discoveries across the country. Marcus developed a network of contacts, teachers, social workers, local reporters, and community leaders who helped identify people whose kindness deserved recognition. Each story was unique, but they all shared the common thread of ordinary, people making extraordinary sacrifices for others. There was Maria Santos, a nurse in Los Angeles who had spent her vacation time and personal money to provide medical care in a poverty-stricken area of Mexico. The foundation provided funding for her to establish a permanent clinic and trained medical staff to continue her work year-round. In small-town Montana, Marcus found James Creek, a retired carpenter who had been building wheelchair ramps for disabled residents at no charge, using his Social Security income to buy materials. The foundation not only reimbursed James for his expenses, but also established a program to train other volunteers and provide materials for accessibility improvements throughout the region. Each success story reinforced David's belief that Marcus had been the perfect choice to lead this initiative. You understand these people because you are one of them, David told Marcus during one of their weekly meetings. You recognize genuine compassion because you've lived it yourself. That's not something that can be taught or faked. William, who was now living in a comfortable apartment near David's family and regaining his strength daily, had become one of Marcus's strongest supporters and advisors. Marcus, what you're doing with this foundation is creating ripples of kindness that will spread far beyond what you can see, William said during one of their regular visits. Every person you help will inspire others, and those people will inspire still more. You're not just helping individuals, you're changing the culture of compassion in this country. The foundation's work began attracting national attention when a major news network featured Marcus's story and several of the people the foundation had helped. The segment, titled "The Delivery Boy Who Changed Everything," brought thousands of nominations for deserving recipients, and inspired other wealthy individuals to create similar programs. Marcus found himself invited to speak at conferences and universities about the power of everyday kindness. But perhaps the most meaningful development came when Marcus received a call from Mrs. Chen, the restaurant owner who had watched him leave that rainy night to deliver William's soup. "Marcus, I see you on television now. Very successful man," she said in her accented English. "But I want you to know I always knew you were special. The way you care about people, even when you are tired and struggling yourself, that is rare." Gift. Mrs. Chen's call reminded Marcus of how far he had traveled from his days as a struggling delivery driver, but it also reinforced his commitment to staying connected to ordinary people and their struggles. He made it a point to regularly visit his old neighborhood, eating at Chen's kitchen and staying in touch with the community that had shaped his character. 6 months into his new role, Marcus faced his biggest challenge yet when David approached him with an unexpected opportunity. "Marcus, I've been thinking about expanding the foundation internationally. There are people all over the world who show the same kind of compassion you showed my father, and they deserve recognition and support too. Would you be interested in leading that expansion?" The prospect of traveling the world to find and help compassionate people was both exciting and daunting for Marcus, who had never even owned a passport before meeting William. But he realized that his mission had grown beyond just helping individuals. It had become about proving that kindness was a universal language that could bridge cultural and economic divides. As Marcus considered this new challenge, he reflected on the incredible journey that had begun with a simple decision to make sure an elderly man ate his soup while it was still warm. That moment of compassion had not only saved William's life and reunited a family, but had also created opportunities for hundreds of other people to be recognized and supported for their own acts of kindness. The transformation in Marcus's own life had been dramatic, but he never forgot the lesson that William had taught him that first night. That the most important measure of success wasn't wealth or status, but the positive impact you had on other people's lives. Every day, as he walked into his impressive office overlooking the Chicago River, Marcus remembered that his real job wasn't to manage a foundation, but to find and celebrate the William Harrisons and Roberto Martinezes of the world, proving that compassion was the most valuable currency of all. A legacy of compassion. 1 year after that rainy Thursday night when Marcus had first knocked on William's door, the Harrison Foundation was preparing for its first annual Compassion Awards ceremony. The event, being held at Chicago's most prestigious hotel, would honor 50 individuals from around the world who had shown extraordinary kindness to others. Marcus stood in his elegant black tuxedo, looking out at the ballroom filled with philanthropists, business leaders, and media representatives, still amazed at how his life had transformed. William, now fully recovered and looking healthier than he had in years, was seated at the head table with David's family. The past year had been miraculous for William. Not only had he regained his physical health, but he had also rebuilt his relationship with David and formed deep bonds with his grandchildren. Emma and Michael now spent weekends with their grandfather, listening to his stories and learning about their family history. "Ladies and gentlemen," David said as he stepped up to the podium to begin the ceremony, "1 year ago, a young delivery driver made a choice that changed all of our lives. Instead of rushing off to his next delivery, Marcus Chen chose to stay and help my father, a lonely old man who had given up hope. That single act of compassion not only saved my father's life, but also reunited our family and inspired the creation of this foundation." As David spoke, Marcus felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had grown from his simple decision to care about a stranger. The Harrison Foundation had now helped over 300 individuals, provided millions of dollars in support to worthy causes, and inspired the creation of similar programs in 12 other countries. But more importantly, it had proven that ordinary acts of kindness could create extraordinary ripples of positive change. The first award recipient was Roberto Martinez from Detroit, whose food bank now served over 5,000 families monthly, and had trained volunteers in 20 other cities to replicate his model. Roberto had flown in with his wife and children, who beamed with pride as their father was recognized on the national stage. "I never thought that helping my neighbors would lead to anything like this," Roberto said in his acceptance speech. "But I've learned that kindness is contagious. When you help one person, they help another, and the circle keeps growing." Maria Santos, the nurse from Los Angeles, was honored for her medical clinic in Mexico, which had now expanded to serve 3 villages and had trained over 50 local health workers. James Creek, the carpenter from Montana, had used the foundation's support to establish a nationwide network of volunteers who had built over 2,000 accessibility ramps for disabled individuals. Each story shared that evening reinforced the same truth Marcus had discovered, that compassion was not about grand gestures or unlimited resources, but about seeing a need and choosing to act despite personal cost or convenience. The award recipients came from all walks of life: teachers, factory workers, retirees, students, small business owners, but they all shared the common thread of putting others' needs before their own. The most emotional moment of the evening came when William himself took the stage to present the final award. "This past year has taught me something profound about the nature of family," William began, his voice strong and clear. "Family isn't just about blood relations, it's about the people who choose to care for you when you need it most. Marcus Chen became family to me the moment he chose to stay and make sure I was okay, even though it cost him his job and his financial security." William's voice broke slightly as he continued. "But tonight, I want to talk about a different kind of family. The family of compassionate people who make our world better through their kindness. Every person honored here tonight is part of that family, and every person they've helped becomes part of it too. This is how we change the world. Not through grand proclamations or political movements, but through individual acts of love and sacrifice." The final award went to a surprise recipient, Mrs. Chen, the restaurant owner who had watched Marcus leave that rainy night and had quietly been nominating deserving people from her community for the foundation's support throughout the year. When Marcus called her name, Mrs. Chen looked stunned as she made her way to the stage. "I just cook food and care about my neighbors," she said simply. "I don't understand why this is special." Marcus took the microphone to explain. Mrs. Chen represents something beautiful, the quiet, consistent compassion that happens every day without recognition or reward. She feeds hungry customers even when they can't pay. She checks on elderly neighbors. She creates a warm place where people feel welcome and cared for. That kind of everyday kindness is the foundation that all other compassion builds on. As the ceremony concluded, Marcus found himself reflecting on the incredible journey of the past year. He had gone from struggling to pay rent as a delivery driver to leading a multi-million-dollar foundation, but the most meaningful change wasn't in his circumstances. It was in his understanding of his own purpose and potential. David approached Marcus as guests were mingling after the ceremony. "Marcus, I have something to tell you. My board of directors has been discussing the future of Harrison Global Enterprises, and we've made a decision. We want to offer you a position as Vice President of Global Initiatives, overseeing all of our charitable and community outreach programs worldwide. The foundation would become just one part of your responsibilities." The offer represented an even greater opportunity than Marcus could have imagined, but he found himself thinking not about salary or status, but about the people he could help and the compassion he could inspire. "David, I'm honored by the offer, but I need you to know something. Whether I'm a delivery driver or a vice president, my mission remains the same: to find people who need help and make sure they get it. The title doesn't matter as much as the impact." David smiled, the same warm expression Marcus had seen in those old family photographs. "That's exactly why you're the right person for this job. you understand that true success isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by what you give away and how many lives you touch along the way. As Marcus looked around the ballroom at the award recipients, their families, and the supporters who had come to celebrate compassion, he realized that his story had become much larger than one person helping another. It had become proof that kindness was not a weakness or a luxury, but a powerful force that could transform individual lives and entire communities. The rainy night when he had chosen to help William Harrison instead of rushing to his next delivery had seemed like a small decision at the time, but it had taught Marcus that there were no small acts of kindness, only acts of kindness that seemed small until you saw how far their ripples could spread. As he prepared to take on even greater responsibilities in his mission to celebrate and support compassion, Marcus carried with him the simple truth that had started it all. When you see someone who needs help, you help them, regardless of the cost to yourself. That night, as Marcus drove home through the same Chicago streets where he had once delivered food, he passed by Chen's kitchen and saw Mrs. Chen closing up for the evening. He stopped to wave at her through the window, and she smiled back with the same motherly warmth she had always shown him. Some things, Marcus realized, were more valuable than any success or recognition. The simple human connections that remind us we're all part of the same family, all responsible for taking care of each other, one act of kindness at a time.